I do want to talk about what to expect today. I'm gonna introduce to you an opportunity in multi-level marketing that is gonna blow your mind. For a small investment,
I've already signed up. It's great. You guys should, really. All right.
This is great.
It's fantastic, isn't it? What a great group. And you know they did just stay for you, by the way.
What was the percentage of people who wanted to hear you again?
0.
Drop off.
It might have been negative.
That's nice.
That includes the people that didn't want to hear me the first day. It was negative, you know? So, anyway, hey, so Bryan, we had a chance to chat some backstage, and you have a new book out.
Yeah.
My Life in Parts.
A Life in
Parts. And you also are going to be doing a new play, new theater in London coming up.
I'm gonna be doing a play in London at the end of this year and into the first 3 months of next year, based on Paddy Chayefsky's brilliant screenplay Network. That was
remember that in the 70s? You guys remember that? There's a few people. Look at here. Yep, they remember it.
6 people knew who Paddy.
6 people. So if you're in
One
London,
of them's related to Paddy Chayefsky too. So that's it.
So if you're in London between November and March,
November and March, come see it at the National Theater in London.
Bryan's got tickets for all of you that we'll be handing them
everything
out.
Taken care of, flights, hotel, all set up. Chuck has been so kind in arranging this. Your generosity is off the charts.
Yeah, it's overwhelming me right now. That's good. I got to learn who I'm dealing with. I'm used to being the funniest guy on the stage.
Well, you know.
Not today.
No, maybe not.
All right.
It's funny that someone told you were funny.
It was me. All right, well, it's been great having you. Thank you for coming.
The shortest interview alive.
We're done.
Cisco almost live.
All right, well, we actually had a flow that we were supposed to get into, I think, at some point, but I don't remember what it was now. Yeah, it's gone. It's completely gone. No, so let me start with something that I thought was just really interesting to me personally, because in your book, you have a chapter in there about, I think it's called farmland.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, farmhand. Yeah.
Farmhand. I'm going to get something right in a minute. And you talked about this was your grandparents?
Yeah.
And tell us a little bit about that, because you and I have a similar experience as part of this, and I'm not sure how far we're going to go with it, but anyway.
Yeah. It was a tough time in my life. I was 11 years old, and my parents had just split up. This is the funny part. And so there were some troubling times. My mother lost the house. We got foreclosed on. The family was fractured. And my brother and I, who was 2 years older, were sent to live with my grandparents, he's a retired baker of strict German stock. And he had a gentleman's farm. And so we went kicking and screaming to live on the farm for a year. We're 2 kids from LA, and we didn't know this. One of the first things that we realized is that this was not going to be any easy living. We always had chores before and after school, had to do all our homework. We never watched television. It was horrible. But it was interesting because in retrospect, obviously, you look back and you go, without that year, I don't know where my work ethic would have come from, because they gave me what I really needed, and I didn't even know I wanted. One of the things that my grandfather did as a rite of passage was to have my brother and I kill chickens or other livestock.
This is actually the thing we had in common.
This is what we have in common.
That's a true story, by the way. This is true, by the way.
I did it because my grandfather told me to. You did it just for fun. There's a distinction there.
That part's not true, just for the record.
And then there was that time in juvenile hall that you, okay, I won't go into that.
There were some things we were going to keep backstage.
Yeah, some things we were going to keep backstage. My brother, being 2 years older, was given the axe first, and there was a chopping block, and there was a whole corralled basket of chickens. There was a bucket next to the chopping block that was used for blood. And then there was a dead chicken bucket. It was all very well organized. My brother was given the axe, and I was grateful for the first time that he was 2 years older than me. And my grandfather had already showed us with about a half a dozen chickens how to do it. Chop the heads off. You're holding the entire chicken with one hand, including the wings, and you allow the chicken to go through its trauma at the end of its life. I just realized how awkward this story is.
That was very awkward.
And the blood drains into the bucket, and then you throw the chicken in the dead chicken bucket. So there was plenty of blood in there, and then my brother started, and he closed his eyes as he was coming down on the chicken's head, and it went into the comb and into the stump, and then he let go, and so the chicken was like, what was that? My grandfather,
we're gonna get.
Oh, for crying out loud, you know, and he went on, this is how you do it. And so my brother had to do it for a few times, and then it was my turn. And I was determined not to do the same thing that my brother did. So I grabbed the chicken with two hands, went all the way down to its legs, made sure that both wings were on one hand. I put it on the stump. I took that axe, and I was going to focus and follow through on this, and then I saw the chicken do that. I said a little quietly, I said, I'm sorry. Wham! Off it goes. Over the bucket, I'm holding the chicken. It's shaking like crazy. And all of a sudden, one of the wings got loose, and I was trying to catch the wing. Then the other wing got loose, and I'm trying to get it before my grandfather yells at me. And the chicken started lowering as I'm trying to reach for it, and it went all the way into the blood bucket, of course, which the feathers are swinging like this. The blood is cascading up onto my face. I was holding on to the chicken as the blood, I looked like Carrie. And I was not gonna let go of the chicken, but I was covered in blood. And then finally I let go of the chicken, and the chicken is running around with no, you know. And I remember my brother, for the first time, when something like that would happen, we'd usually laugh at each other, but he wasn't laughing at me. And he took a garden hose and he hosed me down. I was really humiliated, and I felt like a failure. And my grandfather, oh, for crying out loud, here's how you do it, you know. And but then later on, the odd thing is that later on at dinner with my grandmother, my grandfather retold this story. And all of a sudden, this strict disciplinarian becomes a storyteller filled with embellishment. And then he kicked the bucket and he did that. I didn't do that. But he wanted to give the full story to my grandmother. Yeah. They laughed and laughed. I guess it was funny.
I changed my mind. We don't have anything in common on this.
You did something similar, right?
Well, I grew up on a farm, and we actually did similar things to chickens. And I just don't feel quite as comfortable as demonstrating and talking about it as you do. And we didn't have the bucket or anything. It just sort of like went straight from the block to running around. And it was, but we did share that I had a grandfather who anytime, my grandfather, I would ask really intelligent questions like, is that electric fence on? And he would say, I don't know, why don't you touch it?
And you touch it?
I touched it.
You touched it.
And then when we go into dinner, you know, he's telling the story, and he's like, and then he put his foot on it, and then he laid on it. Yeah, it's the same thing. Everything. His whole body was shaking. So anyway, it's, but it does teach you it teaches you work ethic, and it really does shape who you are.
Man, I tell you, it really came in handy. just that sense of your nose to the grindstone. And I have developed that blue-collar working mentality that has really served me. I enjoy the work. I don't have any expectations of the world owing me anything. And when I meet young actors who talk about wanting to be stars or become popular or become a celebrity of some sort, I try to dissuade them from it, because they're obviously looking for some kind of result without putting in the work. And there's no way that it just doesn't happen that way.
It doesn't.
So I try to encourage young actors to really love the art within themselves and work at it, passionately work at it. And if you get tapped on the shoulder and someone says, we want to recognize your work, allow it to be the wonderful surprise that it should be, as opposed to some level of expectation.
That's great. Well, we also gave some of the attendees the opportunity to put some questions together for you. So if you don't mind,
sure.
Could we just get the first question from one of the attendees for Bryan, please?
My question for Mr. Cranston would be, is he ever concerned about getting stuck or stereotyped into a particular role? What about versatility? Are you more concerned about versatility and playing more versatile roles?
Well, thank you, giant face on a screen.
His last name's Orwell.
It's Orwell, yes. It's been a great run. I've had a lot of great roles, and no, I think it's up to the actor themselves. I think it's also, it repeats itself in businesses everywhere that I don't want to continue to do the same thing. I don't want to be derivative of myself. I want to keep exploring, keep trying new things, taking risks. I have a great wife who's in the front row here,
right
Robin, and we've been together for many, many years. So I have a great foundation, and she allows me to go crazy in my work because I know I can always come home and there's sanity there.
Yeah.
And so when you create an environment like that you know who you are, you know what you want out of life, it allows you freedom to be able to take chances and experiment and go out and try new things, because the repercussions from that in a negative way are minimal. You're like, well, okay, that didn't work, but at least you know it didn't work. I often tell directors when I'm working with who I haven't worked with before, you'll see me start to take this character out further and further out on this limb. And when you start to hear the limb crack, please just bring me back. But I personally need to feel get a sense of how far I can go before I know it's too far.
Yeah.
And if you never venture out to those distances, you'll never really know. And I think that must carry over in your business as well, doesn't it?
Well, it does. I mean, even the people in this room, the technology evolution that we see and what's possible with the technology, these people are constantly testing the limits of what's possible. Trust me,
yeah.
Very much doing so. And so, yeah, it's true in everything. It's true in our lives. I mean, anytime you progress through your career, every time you take on a new challenge, you're doing something you haven't done before.
Yeah.
And you're putting yourself out there. And so I think everybody in here can relate to that.
That's part of the excitement of life, your working life as well.
It really is. Now, you had a chapter in the book on how the whole audition process, and you went in and auditioned for parts, you got the parts, they were hugely successful, and then you moved on.
Yes.
Is that how it works?
It's so easy. It's so easy. Yeah. Well, this was interesting too, and I think that every aspect of what I do for a living can actually be related to other aspects of people's businesses, and certainly Cisco. I used to think that when there was casting for a movie or a television series or play, that it was, for me, a job interview. I was going to go in and apply for the job. They were hiring actors. I'm an actor. That's what I'm there for. And I realized, I don't know how, maybe through just, self-examination and trying to assess how I was doing at any given time, evaluating your career, I thought, I think I'm doing this wrong. What I realized is that when someone goes into a situation where they need something from someone else, they are, in essence, giving up part of their power. They're giving up their control of a situation, as opposed to going in and just focusing on what you do and being confident in what you have worked on and spent a lot of time with. So I turned it around in my head that I realized I'm no longer going to go into these casting offices looking for a job, wanting a job, or needing a job, because you can feel the need off people. Instead, I was going to look at it as not going in to get a job, but going in there to do a job. And ever since I adapted that point of view, like 25 years ago, my whole career just shifted. All of a sudden, I was happier. I didn't feel like I was in competition with my fellow actors. Like I wouldn't feel jealous or envious of someone else because it wasn't mine to begin with.
Right.
It would be like if I found your wallet, I would, of course, first take the money out, and then...
Oh, I would expect nothing less.
Yes. But if I found your wallet, I'd go, oh, this is Chuck's wallet. I found your wallet. I don't feel bad I feel great that I found your wallet. It's your wallet, it's not mine. And that's the sensibility I took into these auditions. When a friend got a job, I'm happy for you. So there was a, for lack of, I don't want to sound too flowery, but there was a cleansing of my spirit in being able to just embrace someone else's success and happiness and it has nothing to do with me other than I'm grateful for a friend. So it changed my life. I was able to then focus on the work and go in there with confidence. And I tell young actors this, there's a distinct difference between boastfulness and confidence. Mm-hmm. You don't want to go in there pounding your chest and say, I am your savior, look what I'm going to do for you. It's a quiet confidence. You go in there and you present yourself in your professionalism, and you've prepared, you've worked on your scene, in my case, and you present it, and you thank them very much, and you walk away. And I found out when I do that, I have had more work than I know what to do with. And now that I cast myself as a producer and director, I can tell the difference between someone who comes in and retains their confidence, retains their power, and someone who is giving it away. You'll have a lot of needy people come in who then do their scene and go, can I do something else? Is there something else I could do for you? I'd like to do anything else. And I start to feel nervous because they're nervous. And it's like, no, that's fine, no. And you have a tendency to push away from that kind of energy. Mm. And it just didn't seem valuable to me anymore, so I just got rid of it.
That's interesting. We talk backstage about in our industry and in our world and business and what we do every day, we're always focused on many points we find ourselves very focused on the outcome. What's the outcome we're trying to get to? And what you described is more, if you just focus on being the best that you can be through the process, the outcomes will take care of themselves. I mean, it's sort of how I translate what you've been saying.
It is. It's a huge mistake in my business when people are focused on, God, if I get this job, that means I can buy that car. And it's like, wait, you're not focusing on what you would allow you to be able to make that decision.
Yeah.
First this, then that.
That's great. Well, we have Mr. Orwell again. If you don't mind.
Gosh.
We'll have another.
Yeah.
We'll get another question.
Hey Bryan, this is John Spindler. I was just wondering, how do you get prepared mentally for all of the roles that you play in?
How do I get prepared mentally? Electric shock therapy. Electrodes, button. Every time I start a character, there's no guarantee that it's going to happen for me, and they're always outside of you. an actor needs to rely on many things. One of them is curiosity, to be able to really understand the human condition and how people behave and why they do the things they do. So there is that, to be able to dive into research. If it's a non-fictional character, there's usually something of note, biographies or an autobiography, people alive who knew the person. So I depend heavily on that. And then there's your ability to go back into the text and draw out what you may need. There's also the willingness. An actor must have the willingness to be able to open up your emotions and reach in and say, oh, here's when I was jealous, I remember that, and I'm feeling these things, and be able to pull them out again and actually relive those feelings. It's an emotional risk for an actor. There was a scene in Breaking Bad. It's the first chapter in my book, and it was the most upsetting scene that I have ever shot. It was, for those of you who watched Breaking Bad, it was the scene where I watched Jane die in bed when she was choking on her own vomit. Remember that? A lovely actor, Kristen Ritter, was acting her heart out opposite, and there are 2 cameras on me, and I'm watching this. Well, my homework before was to write down any possible emotions that I could feel at this time. And one of the things, it's like reasons to save her, reasons to let her die. And one of the things that I wrote down under reasons to save her was, she's a young child. She could be my own daughter. And then, but on the other reasons is like, she's going to get Jesse hooked on heroin. She could kill him. And so once I do all that homework, then I let it go, and then trust that it's in there somewhere. And then when we start shooting, whatever comes to me, comes to me. And at this particular time, Kristen Ritter's face just melded into nothingness, no features at all. And that was odd to me. And then all of a sudden was the face of my real daughter, Taylor, choking on her own vomit. And it scares me now when I think about that. But I saw her face, and just as quickly as I saw her face, it started to leave again. But it left its mark. It frightened me, and it's in the episode where I choke back on what I just saw. And those are the things that you must be willing to do as an actor. You must be willing to take those risks. And then still protect yourself, if at all possible, at the end. Surround yourself with people you care about that can help get you out of that mood.
Yeah. Well, in the book, you wrote a chapter about preparing for the theater work you did in LBJ.
Yeah.
And there was, there you go.
Thank you.
And it was interesting because it was a sort of a tight time frame that you had to get into that. It's live theater, and I have to tell you, it sort of felt like middle of last week when I went from focusing on the launch we did to focusing on my keynote here. It was like, I got a few days, and you don't get to
luxuriate and drafting a...
And you don't get to say, hold on, I screwed up. Could you guys start the cameras over again, please? Because all these people are sitting here. But I mean, and you went through a process where you actually, it felt like at one point you weren't sure you were going to get there.
We did this play All the Way, which covers Lyndon Johnson's first year in office, 1963 to the election in 1964. The passing of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 within 6 months after taking over. It's a beautifully written play, and it was and historically important, very entertaining. And it's a 3-hour play, and I'm Lyndon Johnson, and I have almost all the dialogue in blocks and blocks and blocks of dialogue. Well, I was having so much fun down at the Johnson Library in Austin, Texas, and in the Hill Country, where his ranch was, and talking to people and his lawyers and his daughters, and just doing all this great research. I was taking it all in, and it was fantastic. I was just loving the whole time. And I said to myself, well, when I get to Boston, we did it for 6 weeks in Boston before taking it into New York, I'll learn the dialogue when I'm in Boston. I'll figure that out. And I got there, and we did a table read, all 3 hours of it, and it's me. You have a line. Me. You, me. And I was like, oh my God. The director says we're going to spend the first week rehearsing Act 1, the second week Act 2, third week we'll put it all together. So I have 3 weeks really to memorize 3 hours of chunks of dialogue, dates and names and places, and you can't fudge those things. You got to get them right. You know the 1900 some odd whatevers. So I was panic-stricken. I made a mistake, and I was mad at myself for being this old to make kind of a rookie mistake, really. And I would call Robin every night on my walk home in Cambridge, and she would have to just calm me down, because I was saying, I can't do it, I don't know, I can't do it, this is not gonna work, I don't know what I was thinking, I don't have enough time, I need 2 more weeks to do this. You're fine, you're okay, it's gonna work, and all these calming things, and I needed to hear that, but still I was panicking. To the point where, if you remember, back in the 80s, do you remember Tonya Harding and Nancy Kerrigan?
Yep.
You remember? Those of you who are laughing are old now. And you need to then tell the people who weren't laughing I'll tell them it. I'll save you. I don't want to expose you for being too old. There were 2 ice skaters of Olympic quality level, Nancy Kerrigan and Tonya Harding. They were always in competition with each other at that high level. And they were going into it again for another bout, another Olympics coming up, when all of a sudden someone took a metal pipe and smashed it on Nancy Kerrigan's leg. Boom, down she goes. She's screaming, why? Tonya Harding, meanwhile, is going, oh, look at that, that's a shame. Oh no, I guess she can't skate now. It turns out Tonya did it. She hired someone through her bodyguard to attack her opponent with an actual pipe. Oh my God, it's insane. Now, what's even more insane, I'm thinking of this as I'm walking to the theater.
Who were you going to hit?
I was going to hit myself, Doc. I was thinking in a moment of absolute insanity, I was thinking, how hard do I need to hit my knee to give me 2 weeks? I just need two more weeks to memorize these lines. It can't be a full swing. That's a month or more. I just want 2 weeks. So I'm actually going, and I caught myself laughing, because that's how much pressure I put on myself, and the mistake. And I had a dear friend who helped me out, and he said, look, here's the deal. Come the first night where you have an audience, you are going to be on stage, and you are going to do this show. So just accept it, buckle down, don't stop working, and when it happens, it happens. And I just had to take it as like, it's a big trust exercise.
Yeah.
And I just said, okay, here it goes. And I have jealousies. I would do nothing but study for that full month. Nothing. Every single hour of the day, I was either sleeping or working on that script. And when it came time to perform it, I realized that I was very lucky, because I missed going to movies, I missed going to dinners with friends, I missed all the things that my castmates were doing. I didn't do any of it. But when it came time to walk out on stage, I got to play that role. And that was one of the roles of a lifetime, and it was an amazing experience. We went to Broadway, we won the Tony, it was fantastic.
That's a fantastic story. Isn't that great? I'm glad you hadn't reminded me of when I rehearsrsed on Sunday, because I might have thought about that same thing.
Just come up with, if I came on stage and you had a bat behind your back, I'd have been a little panicked.
Well, if you don't mind, we have another question.
Sure.
We'll take from one of our folks in the audience.
Mr. Cranston, just curious on your Heisenberg character, how you went from a very sympathetic character to a very dark and ruthless character, and how that transformation happened. And is that something that you can just shake off once the series was done?
It's a great question. How can you go from what was a milquetoast kind of nice guy into an evil person, a bad guy? And I honestly believe that we are born with the capability of being all of those things. And it's through education and love and influence and guidance that we become, hopefully, the best of what our potential is. But I do know that there are moments in my life, and have been, I wrote it in the book, when I saw that I could cause harm. It was a harrowing experience with a crazy girlfriend.
No one can relate to this.
No one can relate to that. But that experience made me realize that the potential is within everybody. Even the meekest person among us could become dangerous under the right set of circumstances. If someone threatened your family, for instance, the meekest person of the family could have, with their backs against the wall, do anything and everything in order to protect. We sense that that's possible. So it was just in allowing myself to accept the good parts of my nature and also embrace the negative parts of my nature, the scary parts. Yeah. You know, the times that I have been red with anger, just livid, and felt like you could kill anyone.
Robin, you never see that, do you? No, he's good. Okay, good.
No.
You're being hypothetical, I think.
No, well, yeah. No. I mean, but there is an old phrase. I don't know if you remember this, seeing red, and it's a real experience of when you get so emotionally caught up that you momentarily have your sensibilities taken over by emotion, and it just drives you. And so there were times when I saw red, and I just was able to tap into that person when I needed to play Heisenberg. When he became a danger to himself or to others, I was able to say, okay, I need to show this guy.
Wow.
He needs to come out.
That's great. So let me shift gears for a minute, because I can only imagine what it's like in your life, being the celebrity that you are, and having gone through those early auditions, and then when you really hit it and you became like a household name and everybody knows you. And I mean, I gotta figure, you talk a little bit about the celebrity aspect of your life now. How do you deal with that? I know that the folks would love to hear, like, how did it change, and how do you think about it?
Well, what's interesting is that when you're an actor, your job is to observe human behavior so that you can replicate it at some other point, almost like a filing cabinet. See how old I am? A filing cabinet.
I had someone last night say, do you hear that song on the jukebox?
In the jukebox.
The jukebox.
And be able to, when you're playing a role, you kind of go through the little file of your head and go, oh, you know what? I could use this, and this might work, and that might work. And so I tell actors that you should never be bored. If you're bored, shame on you. That there's always something to observe in human behavior. There's always something to glean out of situations that you may find yourself in, waiting for someone at the airport or in a restaurant or something. There's always something that you can do about finding and connecting with the human experience. And that's what was so fascinating to me. Now, at the age of 41, 41, I get Malcolm in the Middle, and things change. Now, I had already done Seinfeld, and I was their dentist on Seinfeld for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
Which is fun. But I didn't get the attention on that show, of course, that then Malcolm in the Middle provided, and then Breaking Bad just broke it all open. So I still deal with it. It's still odd to me because in my mind, I'm still that blue-collar working guy that just wants to keep my head down and focus on the work and see what we can create. Yeah. But other people see me differently. And so I'm not so keen on having the conversation stay on me. I'm more interested in what's out there. Yeah. I'm not as interested here. And oftentimes when we come across the public, and I'll see you in the lobbies or something like that, I'll definitely take a picture with you. I'll definitely say hello, shake your hand. I'd love that. But I don't necessarily love to launch into my life so much. This is different. This is fun to be able to express myself and in a large group. But you know, I don't know. The celebrity aspect of it is odd. And now my wife and our daughter are aware of it. They know when we go into a restaurant, I sit in a seat that faces the wall. I choose the worst seat in the house. We try to go in the back. I wear a hat and try to, not to disguise, but try to just not stand out. But it's still a work in progress for me. It really is. I must say that I'm not completely comfortable in celebrity. It is what happened, and it happened as a result of doing work, and I'm grateful for that, and I'm very fortunate. So I'll just learn how to deal with it as I go along.
Well, for what it's worth, you just come across to me like a blue-collar chicken killer.
Yeah. BCCK. I'm going to have that put on a BCCK.
Right there on your shirt.
Blue-collar chicken killer.
That sounds like the Redneck Comedy, Comedy Club. We could get that going. Let's take one more here.
So Bryan, my question for you is, you've done a lot of movies where it requires that physical acting, where you're interacting with live things, like Breaking Bad, where you're doing explosions and pyrotechnic types of things, versus movies like Godzilla, where you're doing a lot of green screen. And what is the biggest challenge that you have between doing green screen acting versus that physical, where you can touch it and feel it?
That's a good question.
Yeah, it's a good question. The green screen is actually not as difficult as you may think, because we're so versed as actors to working with our imagination that when we're doing Godzilla and they had a laser pointer and they're pointing the laser like, okay, way up there, right around there is the head, and the spiny tail comes down to there, and the teeth are here, and they're going to run from here to there, and you're just looking at the scope of things, and you go, okay, and we're running this way, and you're like, Godzilla! Which was so much fun to do. We're kids. That's what we are. And the more that we just are willing to jump in and play with conviction, the better off we're going to be. Not to question yourself, not to say, oh, this is silly, look what I'm doing, I can't believe this, but just dive in. You'll watch children play, and they are just them. They are playing. They are the doctor, or they are the baseball player, whatever the case may be. And there's a lot we can learn from that. But it's been great, and I love the diversity of roles that have come my way, and you never know when a good idea is going to happen. For instance, I mentioned Seinfeld. There was one time on Seinfeld when I was in Jerry's, in my own dental office, and Jerry was there, and he thought I was molesting him. I was. I was messing. And he was upset that I had a dental hygienist that was like a penthouse pet. also dating myself again now. So he didn't think that was appropriate. There should be some hygienically clean area, you know? And so we rehearsed the scene, and I'm supposed to give Jerry nitrous oxide, the laughing gas. He goes out, and then he doesn't know if I molest him or not. So we rehearse it, fine. They go off and do another scene. I stayed on my set to get used to the instruments and the little stool and where things were so I can feel more comfortable. And I hear this voice, and the voice says, "Hey, you know what would be funny?" And I look around, and I look up, and there on a ladder is a guy adjusting a light. And I said, "What?" He goes, "Do you know what would be funny?" And I said, "No, man on a ladder. What would be funny?" And he said, "If when you took the laughing gas, you took a hit of it first before you get..." And I thought, oh my God, that's very funny. Thank you, man on ladder. And so I didn't tell anybody. I waited till we were shooting. And I just said, "Nurse, may I have the nitrous oxide?" And she hands it to me, and I go, "Yeah, that's really good." And Jerry bends over laughing. He could not. He fell off the bench. He couldn't stop laughing. And then and Larry David, who you now know from Curb Your Enthusiasm, his sensibility was that dry wit, where he was so busy sometimes he didn't laugh, but he would acknowledge when something was fun. "That's very funny, very funny. Good. Wait, stop. Come in 5 seconds later. Now it's funny. Good. Yes. Hey, good. Go in." So he told Jerry, he said, "Jerry, stop laughing. Jerry, stop it. Stop it." And I go, "Okay." I said, "Do you want me to cut the..." "No, no, no. It's a great bit. It's a great bit." But Jerry stopped laughing. We must have shot that 14, 15 times. Sometimes we didn't even get to where I held it. It would be, I would just say, "Nurse," and he was like, "Jerry, Jerry, stop it, stop it." So they're telling me what a great idea I had, and I'm not going to take that. I said, "No, no, no, you got this wrong. It was," and the guy, of course, there's no more ladder. We're shooting the show, and I said, it was that guy," and I pointed off, and everybody's head turns toward this guy, who was leaning against a door, by the way, and he was, where is it here? And he was leaning like this, and when I pointed him, he just went. Like, "I got $1 million. If you just listen, I got $1 million.
I get that from my team a lot.
Yeah. It's like, just let him go. Let him keep talking.
That's great. So I thought one of the funniest things in the book was, it reminded me, I grew up in the South, and I know that's shocking given my accent.
I know. That
you thought I was from
New England
Brooklyn
accent,
or something,
yeah.
in Boston, yeah. And going to Florida, you were, this, I think it was in your biking trip?
Motorcycle trip, yeah.
And
2 years.
the restaurant that you worked in?
Yeah.
And the boss you had?
Yeah.
And what happened there? For those who haven't read the book, this is like really funny.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not kind of not funny and then funny.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Hopefully, yeah. There, I worked, my brother and I took motorcycle trips in the 70s. We left California after both of us realized that what we thought we were going to be doing, police work, was not what we were going to be doing. I had an experience in an acting class where my job was to kiss this pretty girl. I was 19 years old. That stopped all thoughts of police work right then and there.
Tough duty.
It was like, wait, let me see if I understand this. My responsibility in this class is to kiss this girl. Oh, I'm in. I'm an actor. This is what I want to do. So because I went to college to study police science, that didn't work out. So I decided to run away. My brother and I hopped on motorcycles. I left, I had $117 in my pocket, and we just left. And we would get jobs all along the way, in carnivals and restaurants and things like that. This is the 70s when it wasn't so litigious and you can get a job anywhere.
Yeah.
And so we ended up in Florida where we had some cousins living in Daytona Beach. And I got a job, we got jobs in this Hawaiian restaurant called the Hawaiian Inn, Polynesian restaurant. And at the Polynesian restaurant was a cook named Peter Wong. Now, Peter Wong was a guy who really loved the ladies, but he hated the guys. He just hated us. There was nothing you could do or say, no terms of endearment that you can render. There was nothing you can do. He just hated all men, hated us. And so we would go to our waiters meeting beforehand, and we'd always talk about how we would kill Peter Wong. I said I would chop him up in his wok and make Mugu Guy Peter.
That's one of the funny parts, right?
And Peter was a guy who would always have a stack of cash in his pocket. I mean, a thick wad of cash. And he would always go to Highlight, Fronton, or the dog track, and he would pull out his money, and he'd whip out some 20s, and here, he'd buy it. He was flashy. Well, it came to the end of the season, and the work in Florida is mostly seasonal, and our jobs were done, and we were going to take off anyway. And so my brother and I get on our motorcycles, we say goodbye to everybody, and we leave. Well, little did we know that at the very time that we left, Peter Wong went missing. What? What are you? Wait a minute, you're not thinking that. So he went missing, and we found out later that we were wanted for murder. The police put an APB out on us because what happened to Peter Wong was it was a honey trap. There was an attractive young woman who allured him back to some place, upon which there was Tanya Harding with a bat, and Tanya hit him over the head and took the money and put him in the trunk of a car. It's kind of gruesome. Put him in the trunk of a car, closed it down, and Peter was missing. And exactly when the Cranston boys were taking off. And so they found him about a week later. But during that week period, when they're exploring the missing person and then finding the body, they would also come into where he worked, naturally, and they gathered all the waiters together, the detectives, and said, is there anyone who ever talked about hurting or harming or killing Peter Wong? And they're like, yeah, we all did. Is there anyone who is no longer here who talked about hurting? And it was like, oh, the Cranston brothers, they left on their motorcycle. Oh, a motorcycle. They're thinking, you know, badass kind of thing. It's like, we had these sweet little Hondas that we were riding on. And they put out an APB on us to look for us. We were up the coast. We were someplace in the Carolinas, I think, by then. But for a period of time, I was a murder suspect. I'm just saying, be careful.
That clearly helps you for Breaking Bad.
It kind of gave me some street cred.
Oh man, I tell you what, we could go on for a long time doing this.
Yeah, it'd be fun. Are we done?
I think I can't actually see the clock, so I have no idea. I should probably just peek real quick.
You're gonna pee real quick. Don't do that. Chuck, don't do that. Not in front of
I thought we had an agreement. When I stand up, you turn his mic off. We have about 42
It's 4 o'clock.
42 more seconds.
It has been a lot of fun, and it's fascinating to me to think about the experiences that you talk about and how they're not unique to the things that you were trying to accomplish in your life or what you've dealt with, they actually apply across the board with most everybody here. And so it's been a great deal of fun spending time with you.
Thank you, Chuck.
You guys, what about Bryan, huh? So I want to ask one more. Hang on. We'll let you give him another one in a second, but I want to ask. So I know you've been studying for your CCIE exam.
Yeah.
And I know people. We can get you in.
Okay. Does it help that I've killed chickens before?
In my book, absolutely. So seriously, I mean, what's if there's one big thing that you would tell this group that you think has been just I know life's not a straight line, but I mean, as you've experienced all these things and you've had these aha moments where you've realized that changing something here or this life experience was going to come back, anything you want to leave the group with?
Yeah. I'm very fortunate. I think that there are parallels between what I do for a living and what you all do for a living. I really do. I think you people are on the vanguard of creativity. I try to be. You can change the world. There is some magic to that and some amazing feelings that go with that. Now, maybe incrementally at first, maybe it's not going to be earth-shattering, but if any one of you can make our world better in any way, faster, more efficient, I think it's brilliant. I'm in awe of all that you can do. I can't do any of that. So when I play a character that needs to know all about software and things, I want to come to you and be able to ask you the questions on the big board, to be able to say, Chuck, give me your people. How do I do this? What do I say? How can I look authentic? Because in actuality, we in the creative arts are those who are posing as people in the know. You are the people in the know. And so for that, I applaud you, and I thank you very much for having me at this time.
Bryan Cranston.